Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-aliy al-azim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina Abil Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin la siyama baqiyatillah fil aradin ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. Allahumma akhrajni min dhulumat al-wahm wa akrimni bi nur al-fahm. اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of Islamic plan for life. This is our third session on family in Islam. The 11th point in this discussion is about marital life. According to Islam, marriage is not just a legal contract or a financial arrangement or, for example, a sexual relation. It's not just that. But at the same time, Islam doesn't ignore all the important factors. Therefore, Islam doesn't tell us that you have to ignore or to fight against your instincts or against your desires, for example, for food, for sleep, for sex, etc. These are the things that Allah has put in us for a purpose. And the way for our progress is not to fight them or ignore them. And also the way is not to, explode them and, magnify them and, just try to satisfy them without any limits. Everything has a measure. You need to eat, you need to have rest, you need to have accommodation. But spend too much time and money and energy on this is not good. Eating too much is not good. Ignoring these needs also is going to create problems. Yeah? If you don't eat properly and your body is deprived, sooner or later you are going to see difficult conditions, illnesses, disease, weakness, etc. So Islam does not ask us, and indeed does not allow us, to ignore our basic needs and desires, but just says that look at the philosophy behind them. You human beings are more precious than living to satisfy these things. But on the other hand, you cannot have your meaningful and your spiritual life if you ignore these things, because then you are going to be stopped or reduce your speed if you don't take care of these basic needs. And we don't expect everyone to be so strong that even if they are all their life, for example, not enjoying any material, for example, gifts of dunya, they can remain focused, they can remain healthy, they can remain moral, they can remain modest. Not everyone can be like that. We have to be reasonable. Therefore, Islam says you need to marry. Part of it is for your spirituality, for your relation with Allah, for humanity, for many things, for community, etc. And part of it is also to maintain your modesty, your iffah, and to be able to remove lots of pressure on yourself if possible. Of course, if someone who cannot marry, then for example, by not thinking too much about this, by fasting, etc., they can, but it's not a solution to say to people, no one needs to marry, and this is a, animal, for example, desire that we have, and we have to eradicate it. This is not the way Islam looks at it. So if we act properly, our desire for sex would serve family life. So the natural desire of a man for having a wife, or a wife for having a husband, and of course man and woman also have different attitudes. They are not exactly the same, but part of it is shared, although the degree, intensity, dimensions are not the same. But part of it is that both of them have some needs for marriage, which are to be met through marriage. If they ignore this after marriage and say, okay, this is my wife, and I don't need to worry about, for example, her needs, or this is my husband, for example, I have to look after my kids, and I don't need to think about his needs, for example, etc. This creates a problem that in the long term cannot be sustained. People who are involved in family counseling, couples who have problems, I have heard from some of them. I'm not in possession of a comprehensive survey in all communities, but I heard from many people that they say many of family issues are, even without maybe the couple knowing, goes back to this point that they don't have proper marital relation, and sometimes they don't know why they are not happy with each other, why. So, but when this need is not met, it can create problems. So husband and wife should consider this. First of all, you should not think this is a bad thing for you, and you should be honest with your spouse and mention your needs, etc. And also the other party should think that this is a responsibility, and all then become again an act of worship, because you are doing this in the same way that eating can be an act of worship, sleeping can be an act of worship. All these things can be acts of worship. But there can be cases that, for example, maybe the other one party is ill, etc. They have to be, of course, here merciful and kind with each other, but this as a reality cannot be ignored, and this has to be looked after. One of the things that, for example, Islam says is that a man should also be careful about his, for example, cleanliness, his appearance, etc. for his wife. It's not just wife should only, for example, beautify herself for her husband. Man also should do this because they need to, as the Quran says, "Hunna libasun lakum wa antum libasun lahunna." You protect them and they protect you, so they need to look after these things. There are issues in the book, but in the lecture maybe I don't go to all details. Even in the book there are not many, but still there are things that you can read yours. Then here we have also a point that we mentioned this also before, that in Islam part of also this relation is secured through Islamic law and Sharia, but greater part is through akhlaq, like many other relations. For example, relation between parents and children. if you just look at it from a Shari, fiqhi, legal perspective, it's important, but it's not enough. Akhlaq in Islam is very, very far-reaching, and you can, if you want to simplify or oversimplify, we can say fiqh is just a main framework, just set up the boundaries. But akhlaq is something which has infinite degrees, and you can rise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if after observing Sharia, through akhlaq, you can rise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any limitation. So there is discussion about this. Then there is a discussion about some of the rulings. For example, marriage by itself is mustahab, is very recommended, but for some people becomes wajib. People who cannot maintain their modesty and they cannot avoid sins without marriage, they must marry. Also, because it is a kind of agreement between husband and wife, consent of both parties is needed. The boy, the man, has to be happy, and the woman. Both of them have to be happy. No one can force them to marry. They must be happy. Plus, for virgin women, the concept of the father is also needed, or if father is not the grandfather, details are in fiqh. But father cannot marry his daughter without her consent. This is very important. After marriage, man is responsible for protecting his wife, his children, providing them with what they need. It would be accommodation, food, medicine, etc. And even if woman is rich, she is not responsible. She is not, required by Islamic law to contribute. Akhlaqi perspective, of course, different. And from moral perspective, they shouldn't, make these divisions among themselves. It's unity. But from a fiqhi perspective, man cannot say to his wife, because you are rich or you have, money, you have to pay for rent or etc. And woman is not required to do any work at home. But again, it is good that they make, everything in the way that serves the family the best. There must be a competition in offering, not competition in running away from responsibilities. And there's a hadith here that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, Rasulullah divided the task between Lady Fatimah and Imam Ali in this way, that said, Ali, you take care of all the work outside home, and Fatimah inside home. And Lady Fatimah was so happy that she doesn't need to, do things outside home, and have unnecessary, contacts, etc. But at the same time, we know that Imam Ali many times helped Lady Fatimah at home by, cleaning or, making flour, etc. And sometimes when Rasulullah was visiting them, asking who is more tired so that I help, Amir al-Mu'minin was saying, please help Fatima. So this is a competition in helping. Dowry belongs to the wife, and it is the right of the wife. It's not something that you say who has taken, who has given, something like. Sometimes some people don't take it seriously, but it's not just a formal. It's a right. It's your debt to your wife that you have to give as soon as she demands. Of course, it's better if they don't make it very, high in, financial terms. About leaving home, so there should be a kind of arrangement that the wife leaves home with either a specific or general consent of husband. It can be general consent when they marry. They say, I can be visiting my parents, for example. I know that if they agree, that general is enough. They don't need every time. But basically, it should be with a kind of agreement of both parties. On the other hand, man cannot deprive his wife from her takalif, her duties, and say, no, you can never, go out, you cannot go visit your parents, etc. If he wants to misuse his rights, then Hakim al-Shar can stop him. Then there is a discussion about divorce. We said marriage is very much recommended and is the best thing that human beings can build. On the other hand, divorce is the worst halal, the worst thing which is permitted is divorce. Islam is realistic. It doesn't say there must be no divorce at all, because sometimes people make mistakes in marriage, sometimes situations change, sometimes people anyway they don't act properly. So we cannot deny that there can be genuine cases for divorce. And in some traditions, when they all together stopped divorce, then big problems happen, because then some people, to get rid of their spouse, they try to kill them or poison them, or sometimes, for example, they change their religion, or sometimes they don't marry in the first place. So why, we should marry? Because we are going to be trapped. So if we deny divorce altogether, it's a problem. But it's just a kind of emergency exit. I always, say it's not an option. You should, when you marry, don't say, okay, I have an option which is divorce. Marriage is one way. But in any one-way road, sometimes there may be some exit for emergency, but it's not an option. And it's not something that you plan. You cannot, play with your life and life of someone else if you don't have this idea of being committed and say, okay, I marry her or him, then after 1 year, 2 years, I create, some issues. No, it's in the permanent marriage, it means you are giving your commitment to the other person. If you are not able, you have to say in the beginning, I am not committing myself permanently. Then either the other party accepts as a temporary or not, and there are lots of course, discussions here. So Islam allows for divorce, but says it's a very bad, very disliked, and it's like something for emergency. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Jibreel so much advised me about women, to the extent that I thought in Islam, I say in Islam because this is what he means, divorce should not be permitted except if the woman is committing adultery publicly. So much Jibreel was talking about, rights of women, being kind to women, etc., that I was getting this impression. Of course, this is not the final one, that unless there is something like adultery, one should not divorce his wife. There must be really a very huge thing for divorce. And those who keep divorcing are very much condemned, and some hadiths even we have curse for people that they keep marrying and divorcing, and sometimes they are just, this is the plan to. A lady went to Rasulullah. This is in the there's a box here. A lady went to Rasulullah. Actually, some ladies, but maybe one of them asked that men have the privilege that they can go for jihad and they have great reward for mujahideen. What about us? We are deprived of jihad. And Rasulullah said, your jihad is in your home. As a good wife, as a good mother, this is your jihad. Sometimes, some women complain about their husbands. I said, okay, this jihad is not going to be. So your husband, if it was an angel, this was not then going to be a jihad. So it means that there must be some problems. So instead of dealing with enemies who has, gun and, missiles, maybe you deal with the akhlaq of your husband. It's jihad anyway, but we have to see what, is more difficult for us. Sometimes people underestimate these things and they want to do something greater. But maybe this is your actually way to succeed. Maybe what you gain through this is more than what you gain through lots of ibadah. Rasulullah also is quoted as saying, when a lady makes her house tidy and organized, Allah looks at her with mercy, and whoever Allah looks at them with mercy would not be punished. And then he continues and said, when a woman becomes pregnant, she is like someone who is fasting and doing tahajjud in the night, and who is doing jihad with his money and life. A pregnant lady. And when she delivers, she has so much reward, she receives so much reward that you cannot imagine. And also, when giving, fostering the baby, there is reward. And so we should not underestimate being a wife or being a mother. Unfortunately, little by little, this is underestimated. And when people look at achievements of others, they say, okay, what is your job? If a woman says, I have this job, I have this much salary, I run this business, or I work in this company, they look at her with great admiration. But no one says, are you at the same time able to look after your family, your children? No, just she's making money, and sometimes, unfortunately, this is the problem. It is very important that we don't sacrifice our families for the sake of doing something outside home. The time is very short. In some other lectures I have explained that women, if they like, they have interest, they have desire, they are very much welcomed and should be encouraged to do some work outside home if they want, study, work. But if they like, if they have time, if they are not pressurized, if their taqwa is not compromised, their hayya, very much encouraged to work. But to be forced to work because, for example, husband says you must bring money, you have to also work, and to force a woman to work, or norms of the society forces a woman to work full time, and something that she doesn't like, something that she doesn't find meaningful, doesn't get satisfaction, this is not good. So we have to see between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is my main task, what is my second task, what is my third task, and then put our energy into them. Not to say we shouldn't work at all or everyone should work. Even the same person, from time to time the situation changes. Sometimes you have young children, very young kids, sometimes your children are grown up. There are different, sometimes your family is in need, financial crisis, sometimes you have no crisis. So it shouldn't become a norm that every person by default, every woman by default must have full-time job, because this should not be a norm. For a man, yes, every man must by default have full-time job. Even if they don't need money, they must work, they must be busy. But for women, there is no such a thing as a default. So to be a wife, to be a mother is a great responsibility, greatest responsibility, and unfortunately we sometimes or many times underestimate. Then there is a discussion about relation between parents and children. Many things bring parents and children together, but if you look at it a little bit more closely, you would see that children, many times what brings them to their parents is their needs, and therefore when they don't have that much needs then they don't necessarily go to parents, or maybe they visit them quickly, maybe they send a message, etc. But when they need, like a young child, or even after that, if they need, they go to parents. But what brings parents to children is needs of children, and love of parents for children is so great that even if there is no need, still they want to see them, they want to meet them. Therefore, Islam very much advises children to be kind to their parents. بِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Even comes right after Tawheed. قَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Right after Tawheed. إِحْسَان بِالْوَالِدَيْنِ. Although Islam also says to parents that they have to be kind to their children, but emphasis is more for children, because parents by nature, they already do this. But because some people may fail, or in some culture, especially in the time of Islam, this was not that much the case. So much Islam said, you have to show mercy to your children. Even, for example, about kissing children, we have lots of things, because the child should feel that he's loved. But children are to be very careful, because there is a chance that unless you have good tarbiyah, unless you have brought up very well, you may underestimate your need for your parents, or what you owe to them. So, with respect to the book, has this discussion first about parents' love for children, and then inshallah we'll talk about the other side. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, fragrance of child is a fragrance of heaven. So maybe there is no other way more beautiful than say this, to say that how much Islam puts value in children. Or he said, a good child is a flower of flowers of heaven. Rasulullah said, if someone looks at his child with happiness, then it is expected, it's good for him if he would free one slave. Just every time that you look at your child and you see that this great blessing Allah has given you, so it would not be too much, it would not be israf of you, for every time if you are able to free one slave. It means what a great blessing to have children. Or Rasulullah said, kiss your children. Of course, sometimes some children, maybe they don't like, we shouldn't, but most of the children like to be kissed. And you know that once Rasulullah kissed, I think one of his grandchildren, and someone was surprised, said, I have never kissed my children. In that society, it was not good for a father to kiss his child. And Rasulullah said, man la yarham, la yurham. So here it says that when you kiss your child, you receive a degree, a rank in heaven, which is very high. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, sometimes Allah has mercy on a person because of his love for his child. Means a mercy that can save him if there is no other thing. Just sometimes for the love for your children, Allah would forgive you. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, love your children, not only your children, all children, because sometimes we say children mean our children, some we mean kids. Ahibbus sabyan means all children, kids. Love them, warhamuhum, and have mercy on them. Wa idha wa'adtumuhum fafu lahum. When you promise children something, keep your promise. Don't say the child would forget, or child cannot, take me to police, or cannot fight me. No, when you promise a child, Allah is asking you. This promise, every promise is registered in Allah's office. Yeah, so it's legal in a sense. Once a person kissed one of his children and not the other one, in front of the other one, and Rasulullah said, why you didn't treat them with justice? And then there are some hadiths here about the rights of children over parents, for example, about giving them good names and teaching them the Quran, and giving them halal food, etc. That inshallah you can study. And then about the rights of parents and respect and kindness of children for parents, as I said in the Quran, it's very highly regarded. It comes after Tawheed. قَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Abi Wallad al-Hannat, he says, I asked Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, what does it mean to be kind to your parents, to do good to your parents? Imam Sadiq said, it means that when you are sitting with them, you have to, or you are interacting with them, you have to be kind with them, and do not wait till they ask you for something. If you know your parents need something, don't wait for them to ask. Maybe they don't ask, or maybe they feel embarrassed to ask, or maybe they are proud. They don't want to ask their children. But if you know they need something, you should proceed. And if your parents reject you, you should not insult them. Even if they hit you, you should not shout. Never look at them without kindness. And never raise your voice over the voice of your parents. And not put your hand above their hand. And don't precede them when you are walking, don't precede your parents. So basically, you have to treat your parents like second God. Like, you know, if I say like king and queen, it's not enough. I said like second God. This is the respect that we have to have for our parents. You have also heard this famous hadith in Al-Kafi. A person asked Rasulullah, to whom I should be kind? Rasulullah said, Ummak. Then he said, then whom? Rasulullah said, Ummak. So for 3 times Rasulullah said, your mother, your mother, then Rasulullah said, your father. Ibrahim ibn Shu'aib says, I told Imam Sadiq, I have a very old father. He has become very weak. We look after him. Imam Sadiq said, if you can do his work yourself, if you can. Sometimes you can ask a nurse to do this. But if you can, you do yourself. And even put, you know, if he needs, put food in his mouth, because this would be a protection from fire in the hereafter for you. Someone told Imam Sadiq, my parents are mukhalif, means they don't believe in you. They don't believe in imamah. My parents. Imam Sadiq said, in the same way that you show kindness and respect to parents who are mu'min and Shia, you should do the same with your parents. They are of the other faith or no faith. It doesn't mean that you withdraw respect and kindness. Imam Baqir alayhi salam said, there are 3 things that Allah does not give permission. There is no exception for them. 1, ada'ul amana ila al-barr wal-fajr. If someone has entrusted you with something, you have to give back. Whether that person good or bad doesn't make difference. Number 2, when you promise, you have to be loyal. Keep your promise. Whether you have promised a good person or you have signed a contract, whether that person is good or bad, you have to be committed. And 3rd, kindness to parents. Whether they are good or bad, you have to be kind. You know, there are many reasons for this, but I think one reason, it's not the only reason, is to not let anyone, because if we say, if your parents are very bad, you don't need to be kind. Then whoever wants to be unkind says, my parents are very bad. in order to, leave no chance, we say, don't waste your time. You want to say my father is bad? Don't waste your time. Whether he's good or bad, you must be respectful. This blocks the way. People say, my client, is not a good person, or this person has given me this amana, he's a bad person. You say, don't waste your time. Good or bad, you have to deliver the trust back. Imam Baqir said to Jabir, one of the signs of Shia, true Shia, is kindness to their parents. Amir al-Mu'minin said, kissing your child is rahmah, kissing your parents is ibadah. And then we have a discussion about Silay Rahim, which is not just parents and children, all your kinship and even in-laws, you have to be observing the kinship and relation, depending on urf, depending on the context, on requirements of that time, that culture. Sometimes more visits, sometimes less, sometimes more attention, depending. But no one should be considered as a careless person or a person who has disconnected himself from his family. Thank you. And in Islam, there are lots of not only reward promised for Silay Rahim, but lots of worldly benefits. For example, your life will be extended, your rizq will increase, because many things have also worldly outcomes, like kindness to parents, or na'uzu billah, being bad to your parents. There is also a discussion here in one of the boxes for a study about uquq, aqul walidain. And if someone is not grateful to parents and annoys parents, we say this person is aqul walidain. The minimum is off. La taqul lahum off. If you say I'm tired with you or I'm bored with you, But anything even lower than that, if anything that annoys them, this is aqul walidain. Looking at them with anger is. Rasulullah said there are three things that soon you would see the result. One is aqul walidain. If you are disrespectful to your parents and your parents, are displeased with you, quickly you would see. Another is zulm, which you quickly would see the result. And the third is kufr, ungratefulness to someone who has been kind to you. These three things you would quickly see their results. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, on the day of judgment, when the veil from before heaven is removed, every living being, for example, human being, etc., they can smell fragrance of heaven from 500 years of traveling distance. Okay, suppose a person is traveling 500 years, how much you can travel? You can smell the fragrance of heaven. Except one group. Imam Sadiq, except one group. And that is aqul walidain. If someone looks with anger at his parents while they have done zulm to him, وَهُمَا ظَالِمَانِ لَهُ. Allah would not accept his salat. So even if your parents have done zulm to you, you cannot look at them with anger. So this is a great blessing for those whose parents are alive, to be kind to them, because this is the easy way to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no way you please your parents and Allah doesn't, appreciate. And on the other hand, warning, if we fail to observe our duties towards our parents. May Allah inshallah bless all the parents who are alive with health and dignity and ease, and may Allah inshallah send his rahmah and maghfirah to all parents who have passed away, and may Allah enable us to fulfill our responsibility towards the parents when they are alive and even after, because sometimes people, when their parents are alive, they are good. After that, they displease parents. For example, if someone does zulm to his brother or sister after father dies, this also can lead to aqul walidain, becomes aqul walidain. How can your father forgive you if you are doing zulm to your brothers and sisters, if, for example, in inheritance, etc., afterwards? You can say, I was very kind with him, but that's not enough. So before they die and after they die, we have to be very careful not to do anything that either in person or in their spirit they would be unhappy with. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.